Hello, it is Dave, Duncan Kyle, back from Epidemic with another album review. And for this review, Duncan Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from French melodic hardcore quartet, the Amsterdam Red Light District. The band's new album, Trapped, will be released on May 6th via Blood Blast. So, gentlemen, this is album number 4 from the Amsterdam Red Light District, who I'm just now going to refer to as TARLD because words and shit. It's a bit of a mouthful. I actually reviewed easy. I actually reviewed their 2014 album, Gone for a While. That's right. Not with you, Pear, obviously, but back in the rock and roll review days. That's right.
It's been a Kyle.
Back in the day, gents. And I really liked it. I really enjoyed that album. Although, weirdly, it's not on any streaming platforms anymore, which is rather annoying. And if you search for it on YouTube, the Amsterdam Red Light District gets you a completely different set of search results.
I'm sure it does, Dave.
Yeah.
What was even more confusing is why when Dave started typing it in, it auto-filled.
I swear it's a band, honey. I really do.
Google just populates common searches. It's not my common searches.
Yeah. I'd never YouTube searched this band before. But the videos that came up were not related to the band.
No, of course not.
But rather some unattractive women flaunting themselves at a bay window.
Shots fired.
Well, listen, maybe you're into that. In which case, crack on.
Do you mean unattractive women?
Literally crack on. If you're into that, crack on.
Crack on, crack off, whatever.
Oh dear. What is this?
Anyway.
It's a different kind of Karate Kid.
It's like being back in the drug den.
Yep.
I thought to myself, gentlemen, I have been pushing a lot of the crack of the hardcore this year.
What you mean is I'm the one that said this was the year of hardcore, so I'm pushing an agenda to match that statement.
Oh,
no one else has said that. No one else has said it. You're the only one that said it, and it's interesting that whenever we sit down to do a recording, Dave seems to pick a hardcore band. I wonder why that is.
I'm just saying, there's a lot of hardcore out there this year.
A lot of hardcore out every year, Dave.
Well, but this year is the year of hardcore, so.
See.
But I suppose it tends to be like most of the stuff that I would pick is usually at the more extreme side of the spectrum. So I decided I'm going to rein in some of that hostility, just a little bit.
And I'm going to pick something that I would never usually pick. French hardcore,
well,
which I'm trying to think the last 3 hardcore albums we reviewed have been French or French adjacent. So, really breaking that algorithm, Dave. I love it.
I like to keep things French, Duncan. You know what I'm saying?
French Dave is what they call them.
Oui, I do. I thought I'd try a little bit of melodic hardcore this week. Some of them were a little bit melody, some more upbeat vibes. Kyle's heart is black as coffee, so this may not have been a great idea on my part, but I like to keep things fresh regardless, These guys hail from Lyon in France. They are primarily inspired by Enlightenment values, and the band's music advocates liberty, progress, tolerance and fraternity. The band now returned
feels like, isn't that literally the credo of France? It kind of feels like those are the isn't that what I think that might be like what they said out loud before they executed their kings. Guillotines. I'm fairly sure. I like it though. I like it.
I'll take your word.
I think more bands should have that.
Okay.
This band is the French team for the Hardcore Olympics.
They're back with their thumping new record Trapped, which also features guests Drew York from Stray from the Path and Yukina from Japanese metalcore band Hanabi. Also Matt Bastard from acclaimed French rock band Skip the Use.
I'm going to hope that's a pseudonym.
Yeah, true.
Born into a family of bastards.
Fingers crossed, yeah. Poor guy. There's yeah, we reviewed a couple of slightly lighter hardcore albums this year.
Yep.
And one that came to mind actually when I was listening to this was Comeback Kids' Heavy Steps. There's a little bit of a similar vibe going on here. They've got that very energetic, furious kind of verse riffs, and then they'll swing between, you know, the kind of thick, chunky grooves, the kind of a la Stray from the Path, or the high tempo hardcore punk, more in line with bands like Raised Fist. But most of the choruses come with that streak of something a bit sweeter, almost like an anthemic type feel, and that's where the kind of Comeback Kids kind of similarity kind of came in. There's also, though, when I was listening, I was thinking there's something a little bit early 2000s about this as well. There were a few little
You're
hooks.
rich, Dave. I'm gonna. You can have your year of hardcore. I will have my 20-year itch, and I don't know how much I need to bang the drum about this. The amount of bands that come out this year are clearly like that. You know, 2000 to 2005, it wasn't all that bad.
Yeah, I was thinking like there's a few of the little hooks and the riffs that I was thinking, oh, that's a little bit like almost like a little bit of Finch or something like that. Like there's almost like a kind of poppier element in some of the riffs.
Choruses in this are huge.
The vocals as well, yeah, exactly.
Like absolutely huge. So
yeah, and I think like I'd heard these guys before, but I think for the style, I think Amsterdam Red Light District are pretty good at what they do in this style. It sounds like they have a pretty good grip on how to construct a melodic hardcore album that has bite, but also has those kind of heavy moments that feel quite satisfying, but also deliver in the melodic department, which kind of give you a good handful of tracks with, you know, the kind of sing-along type choruses. I think my only kind of criticism here is that it doesn't really sound hugely different from what they've done in the past. Like most bands, they maybe sound a little bit tighter, or the songwriting has been a little more refined, and you can hear that here. They sound on the ball, but I wasn't particularly surprised by any of it. I think it's good quality. It has all the traits of the genre. It has the hooks. It has the bouncy riffs, the gang vocal woes, you know, and it has a few guest vocals in there just to mix things up vocally. And as I say, it's done to a very decent level. The issue comes when you've already heard really strong albums from bands like Comeback Kid, or even Wilhelm Scream. Obviously, they released a good album this year as well. It's hard not to compare this to those releases, and I don't think this quite grabs your attention like an album like Heavy Steps does, if I'm honest. It's not to say it's a bad album, it's not. It's just a little bit kind of similar throughout for me. There weren't enough moments on this that made me kind of stop what I was doing and go, oh, that's really interesting, or, you know what I mean, even the choruses felt maybe a little bit recycled in places. Like I just felt like they maybe used it one too many times. I think it has a consistent level throughout, but I don't think it ever reaches above that level. The one track that I did enjoy more than the rest was track 9. It's called Fairweather Friend, and it was just something as simple as making the main rhythm of that track a little bit choppier, you know, and made it kind of stand out from the rest of the album. I enjoyed the production. I think the production's spot on. Sounds chunky in the heavier parts, and the mix sounds really well balanced. I think it suits their kind of melodic hardcore style. It's you know, they're not of the harder edged hardcore bands, so I think it has to have a little bit polished to it. So I didn't really have any complaints in the production department. But overall for me, it was okay. It was all right. I wouldn't shout about it. Like, it's not an album that I'll be probably jamming for the rest of the year. I think there's probably stronger albums in this genre, but I thought it was decent, is what I would say. Duncan, what about yourself? What do you think?
Dave. I'm no cheap thrills, baby. Stuff the briefcase with $3 bills. Oh no, that's the biscuit chat we're going to have later. Okay. I'd never heard of these guys, couldn't remember these guys from back in the Rock and Reels days at all. So, even under the other name, which I didn't know they had a pseudonym, I just assumed they were just like, let's just call ourselves TARLD.
Yeah.
Which is fine. You're not wrong.
Okay.
But I think there is a heavy re-listen value to this, but I think it's a relatively mediocre album. It's
Okay.
weird. I found myself really kind of bouncy and happy when listening to it.
Mm-hmm.
So in the moment, I think it's a fun album to listen to, and it's mostly down to those choruses.
Yeah.
I think they've really got that like tightened right up, as good as they're gonna get it, like in terms of what they deliver. They're memorable without being too saccharine. They've got punch. There is kind of delineation between the tracks, and that the choruses don't sound the same, although they're clearly from the same band. They're not trying to kind of reinvent that every single time, and that to me is where they're at their most interesting. The actual kind of quasi hardcore element stuff that we're talking about here is the bit that to me feels a bit generic. Overall, I think you mentioned it. I think you've like it's difficult to swim in the lane of bands like Comeback Kid and stuff, and then those bands are like the top tier of that. And I think like every band should always be wary about releasing an album in the same year that the top tier bands of that genre releasing something, because it's very difficult unless you get your album out first. It's very difficult to not be compared to, and I think in isolation the album's fine. But while listening to it, I had a ton of fun, and then afterwards I realised I wasn't, like about 3 hours after it, I wasn't thinking about the album. But then the next time I put it on, I was like, "But this is a great one. Why was I not like?" It's weird.
Yeah.
So it's a very of the moment album. I think. I think like especially with the, I was going to say the nicer weather coming out in Scotland, the day of nice weather we have a year. With some of those kind of sunnier days coming up, I think this works really great as kind of background music to that.
Sure.
Without necessarily being something you have to spend like a huge amount of your attention on. For me, I know you were talking about track number 9. Track number 5, Born to Be Great, I think has the best vocal hook on the chorus out of the entire album. And that track to me was where I felt all the parts come together about the mix of what they were doing with the hardcore, the kind of punchy punky stuff, and the melody. I thought that that was kind of almost like the template of what should have been replicated more, but then even saying that out loud, it just amplifies the overall problem of the album, because they have that these are the building blocks. They never really try and push out beyond that, and that's kind of fine 20 years ago. You know what I mean, when those building blocks were starting to be assembled in such a way that it felt fresh. But even if it is like a 20-year recycle almost of those vibes, to people like us, we've kind of went through that phase. So to come back to it, there needs to be something that feels like an update, something that feels like we've taken those core elements, but we've modernized them. I don't necessarily think they have. So it does feel very much like I'm damning this whole thing with faint praise. It's very well produced. The guys clearly are having a ball writing it, and they've got catchy melodies. I think my issue is that when I listen to it, I'm having a blast. An hour after it, I can't remember anything I've heard on it.
Yeah.
But when I'm hearing the chorus, like when you hear the chorus the first time on any one track, by the time it's coming round, you're humming along in your head. So they've got that element done. It just, I don't think it has anything that gives it a great deal of staying power. And yeah, that's my issue with it. So I could easily go back to this loads of times this year and enjoy it every single time that I come back to it. But like 6 months from now, am I going to remember it? And the issue is probably not. It's going to get lost in a sea of other stuff that's coming.
Plenty of hardcore. Kyle, what do you think?
Well, you know me and my history of hardcore. Hardcore.
Kyle's History of Hardcore is a book that I want.
It's got 4 pages. On each page is one letter each.
Is it like
M-O-P-E.
Is the first page 2021. This is my history of hardcore. Dave gave me an album to listen to. In a genre I don't listen to. You didn't like this?
I mean, I'm on the same page as you. Like, for what hardcore is, I didn't have such a hard time with this one. I mean, it's well written and it's well produced, and they have some very nice drum samples. But other than that, I mean, I had a good time in listening to it. It was on in the background a lot when I was doing other things, and it was fine enough. I mean, I'm not the world's biggest hardcore fan, but you put it up against the stuff we've listened to earlier this year and last year. And I think for me, hardcore is a bit like black metal. Like, listening to the genre itself, it wants me I don't really, it's not my thing.
Comparison, he's not saying they are the same.
Yeah, no.
Dave is like, you've shat in his kettle.
Yeah, no. Black metal, I mean, at least I can hear what the fuck they're doing in hardcore, right? But I think hardcore works best for me when it's mixed with other stuff.
Right.
So, like, we've heard some of that this year, and I've liked it a lot more than this. So when a hardcore band is just a hardcore band, it's like you say, it sounds 20 years old, and it's a bit like, yeah, heard it. But, I mean, they're doing this stuff to a really good level, and they're clearly very passionate about it, and I can get on board with their lyrical content 100%. Really appreciated what they were singing about. It wasn't the same old, whatever the hardcore message is, family values and all this stuff, It's like, your friends are your family. It's like, no, they've taken it in a different way, but they've also got the hardcore stuff, which is, just not my thing, the gang vocals and all this stuff. It's just, okay. Although there were a couple of riffs on the song you mentioned, track 9. That was a groovy fucking riff. I did enjoy that one quite a lot. So there's definitely things to like on this album if you're not a hardcore fan. And if you are a hardcore fan, you're probably going to take a trip down memory lane and go, yeah! And then move on, probably.
I just want to stress as well, on the back of what Dave was saying. What's the name of the band again? Full name of the band? The Amsterdam Red Light District.
Yeah.
They have a track, number 4, called Happy Ending. Definitely don't type that into your search engine. You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
But I feel like they may have done that on purpose.
I like to think, there's a bit of tongue in cheek in there.
You go to YouTube and you're like, the Amsterdam Red Light District Happy Ending. And they're like, maybe we should change our name to TARLD.
I like it.
Yeah. Okay, so ratings for this new release from TARLD, Trapped. It's good, but it just didn't really leave me wanting more afterwards. I'm not sure how much I'll come back to it, considering there are much stronger albums in the genre that I would go to first. But like Kyle says, nostalgically, you might get something from this. Or you might just be a real big fan of the band, in which case, they've got their 4 albums in. They've probably got a big fan base, so check it out if you are. I'd probably go 3 out of 5, 3 out of 5 on this one for me. Duncan?
I'm going to go with the grade that you were clearly wanting to give, but for some reason it got caught in your throat. 3.5. Like I say, and not for any reasons that I think it's any better than what you just said, but the listening experience during it is fun. Right. It's just like I say, when it stops, I'm not like, let's do that again. But if it came on, I'd be happy. You know what I mean? Like if my Apple Genius started flipping through and started playing a song from this album and some mix somewhere, albums you've listened to in the last month, and tracks from this, I'd be happy when I listen to it. So it's a weird thing. I usually don't feel that about albums at all. It's usually one way or the other. I'd never want to listen to this again because there's nothing on it of value, or there's stuff that I really like, it's really catchy, and I have a good time listening to it, so I will listen to it more. This occupies a weird non-space in between that. So 3.5. Okay.
And Kyle?
Actually, I wrote down 3.5 too, so weirdly I'm coming in higher than you on a hardcore album. So let's do that.
What?
It's all wrong now.
WTF, guys. WTF.
Watch me score my next black metal album.
That was the Amsterdam Red Light District and Trapped, out on May 6th on Blood Blast. I will put links below to the band's Facebook. If there's any pre-orders, I'll stick it in there. Let us know what you think. Once you've heard some of the tracks, once you've heard the album, happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That is the review. Thanks for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Please play us with my soul when I'm out of my control. 'Cause you know